Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's video we're going to talk about the MM-100. In all reality, it's actually the MM-100. The MM stands for Manny Marroquin. He's an American mixing engineer, and he's worked with artists like Kanye, Lana Del Rey, Taylor Swift, Linkin Park, just to name a few. So the MM-100 is a more affordable second iteration of the MM series, the Manny Marroquin series. And the MM-500 is a $1,700 flagship headphone. It's an amazing headphone. I haven't reviewed it yet, but I'll likely do that down the road. To me, what makes the MM-100 so special is the price. It's $400 to get a collaborative headphone with a famous mixing engineer, and the MM-500 is tuned really well. A lot of people like it. So having anything with that same naming convention or scheme, I guess, and being only $400 is certainly going to pique an interest of a lot of people. Now, this headphone was kind of sent to me for review, and that's because I actually heard this for the first time at Axpona back in May of 23 and asked if I could borrow or have a review sample since then. So there were some production delays. They actually made some revisions to the pads since that demo, and then when I went to CanJam SoCal last month, I got to actually see the Audeze folks there, and I even toured the Audeze factory, so I have a really cool video coming out of some behind the scenes of Audeze. So keep an eye on the channel for that. Subscribe if you haven't. You'll get notified when it goes live. But I like the MM-100. I wanted to get it. I was able to receive one at that show and then gave it back to them as a loaner because so many people were trying to listen to it at the actual headphone show. Naturally, being $400, a lot more people are going to be interested in this over a $2,000 plus headphone. So lent it back. This is one of the show units, and I will be sending it back to them when I'm done with the review. It won't affect anything about what I say about the headphone or any product I review. That never does, but I just want to be, fully open. I'll probably get my own afterwards because, as you will soon see, there's a lot to like and discuss with this guy. Now, throughout the video, I will be making some mentions of the Headphone Sandara, the Edition XS, the Moondrop Para, which I did listen to at CanJam. My unit hasn't shown up yet. It's actually why I delayed this video, because I've been waiting for the Para. There's been a huge back order because a lot of people are buying it, or they just underestimated and underproduced. But I do have an order at A-Post Audio, so once that shows up, I'll do a follow-up. Like I said, I did listen to it at CanJam SoCal, though, so I'll make some loose generalizations of that headphone later and then expect a more critical review afterwards. So let's start with what you get in the box. Now, you get a warranty card and you get this really nice velvety suede like soft bag. It's not a hard protective case, obviously, so when you step up to the Edition or the LCD-X or the XC, for example, or any of the higher end Audeze headphones, you're going to get a more protective hard case. That's not as portable though, so you can't stuff that in your backpack. So this is great for protecting it from getting scratched and things, but just keep in mind, wherever you keep it, don't let it get subject to some physical abuse. You also get a nice braided cable. So this gloss black cable is, it looks nice, it feels nice, it's rather long. So for portable use, it's a little bit on the longer side, but it does not have any microphonics, which is good. And there's two things I want to point out. So one, let's start with this end. This is the 6.3 millimeter connection or 1/4 inch. It comes with an adapter that steps it down to 3.5. It's kind of like what the older Sennheiser HD560S does. However, my adapter was missing because, again, this came from CanJam SoCal. This is a demo unit. So, but it's shown on the website, and I know other people have gotten it based off pictures I've seen online. Now, the other end is just as important because you will see a single termination. That's because the MM-100 has dual 3.5 millimeters on both sides, which has a wire that comes in through the fork or the yoke into the headband on the other side. So you can actually run a single connection to do the audio for both channels. You don't have to do a double. In fact, it does not give you the option in the box to do that. You would have to buy your own. Now, this one, from what I understand, is also a pre-release, pre-production unit. The very few that came out originally had a crossed wire. That was not what made it out to the public. That has been fixed, but I can't use dual 3.5 millimeter cables with my particular unit, so I was not able to test fully balanced. That's more to see how a different amp would perform, but it won't really affect the sound compared to this. So I do have one other cable though that I used on this that I'll be discussing later that was pretty cool. So that is at least what it comes in the box. And on the inside, because it's not as high end of a headphone, the packaging is more simple as well. And the inside is actually the same kind of packaging that comes with the Audeze Maxwell, only the foam is cut differently to fit the MM100. Now moving on to build quality and comfort, I like a lot of things about the MM100. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of good stuff here, even at the $400 asking price. So you have all leatherette pads, and unfortunately these are glued. That's pretty common with a lot of Audeze headphones. For those of you that own a Maxwell and they're used to just twisting it off, this is a more traditional approach from Audeze. So it is serviceable. You can remove the pads and reapply adhesive if you have to swap it out. It's not like you can't ever switch these, but it's not a quick, user-friendly process. Now the pad dimensions, as far as the opening goes, it's really nice. It's not the largest pad out there, but it's definitely, let's get the right side. It's definitely large enough for a lot of people, about 60 millimeters of height. And when you look at the width, we're looking at about 49. Let's just round down for safety's sake. We'll say 46 millimeters. The depth is over 20 millimeters, which is awesome. It's not the deepest pad. Something like the LCD-X is a little bit deeper, but these are deep enough where my ears do not touch the baffle. And if I compress the pad just slightly, my ears still did not touch the baffle. So I have a little bit of wiggle room. Obviously, if you have larger ears, factor that in because you can't just quickly switch these to a deeper pad. But overall, I think this is going to fit a lot of people fine. Now, the baffle is not padded either. It's kind of like a screen that goes over the waveguides for the planar driver. But overall, it's a pretty comfortable design. Now, having fully articulating yokes really helps with pressure distribution. I don't have a hot spot or a high pressure point on any particular point on my head. It really does conform well, and I think a lot of people are going to find the comfort great. There's no extendable yoke. You can't change the height with this headphone aside from this leather strap here. Now, for me, and this is just like the Maxwell, it fits the exact same way. I left one strap setting on the default middle, if you can see that hole right there. You don't undo the screws, by the way. You literally just pop this off, and that's all you have to do. Now, I went with the top setting for one side. Doesn't matter which side, it's not going to affect anything, but that placed the MM100 in just the right point for me. Now, when you look at it compared to the, well, this is the XS. I grabbed the wrong side without looking, but we'll get into that. This is the Sundara. The Sundara doesn't have any articulation whatsoever. It's like a flex, if you will. Still get a suspension strap. You do get telescoping yokes, so this does fit larger heads a little bit better, but not larger ears because the baffles are thinner. Both of these do not have padded baffles, neither does the XS. This does have that sport fabric material for what touches your ear, whereas Audeze went with a full leatherette. This is artificial leather. It does get a little bit warmer. This is more breathable for me. My ears don't get as hot on the Sundara, but as far as pure comfort goes, the MM100 still feels better on my head. It just feels a little bit warmer. I would rather deal with the heat of the MM100 and take advantage of the comfort. The XS is kind of a different animal. You can see the driver size is absolutely massive. It's one of those big teardrop planars. And if you go by millimeters, I mean, this is like 90 millimeters high and almost 50 millimeters wide. Big opening. It's also rather deep. The headband design has kind of been met with different criticism. Some people like or dislike it. It's the same headband used in the Deva. These are comfortable for me, but some people don't like how it fits on your jaw. It's not too strong of a clamp, so I didn't find any issues there. But this has a more traditional headphone feel from what you'd expect for comfort. Now, the MM100 weighs 475 grams. It's actually heavier than both the Sundara and the XS. The XS is just over 400 grams. It's not as heavy as the LCD-X, for example, though. Those things get over 600 grams. So it's comparable to the Maxwell. It's just slightly lighter than the Maxwell, but because of the design, the pad choice, the headband, and everything, it's going to feel almost identical to that headphone. Now, looks can be subjective, of course, but I do like the MM100 design choices here. It's a mix of grays and blacks. There's nothing flashy. It looks premium without actually being too over the top. You can tell it's a nice looking headphone, but I think they were pretty understated with the overall design. This black mesh grill is really nice too. It's really strong. There's no flex or anything, and it's not a fingerprint magnet either. You can actually handle this a lot, and it always looks clean. It's pretty amazing. I didn't have to clean it right before this video. Usually you have to, get rid of all the fingerprints. That wasn't the case with this, and that's actually really important for actual ownership if those things drive you crazy. Audeze logo on one side, Manny Moraquin on the other, but overall, pretty understated. All right, now it's time to talk about sound quality, and I want to start with the objective stuff first because it kind of takes my own personal opinion out of it. Now, I'm going to show you how this headphone measures on my rig. I'm using a Gross Pinaclone with an IEC 711 coupler on both sides. It's not a flat plate. I do mount it on a system. Don't use these measurements to compare to someone else's measurements because they don't have my rig. Every rig is going to measure slightly differently, at least at this level. Obviously, a B&K system is going to be different, but I just want to preface that. Now, I've been measuring a lot of headphones and gaming headsets on my database. I have a publicly available squig link, so I do have the HD 6XX, the 560, Hi-Fi Men products, other Audeze products, for example, are all on this website, so you can use that for comparison. So looking at the frequency response, let's start with the bass, because this bass extension down to 20 Hertz is amazing. When I soon show you how this compares to some other products, like even the Hi-Fi Men Sandara, having a smaller planar magnetic headphone that has bass extension all the way down to 20 Hertz is a huge feat. So a lot of people are gonna like that. Now this bass is flat, it's not emphasized in any way, hence the whole mixing philosophy behind this model lineup, but you can always EQ more of that. The good news is out of the box it's flat and you're not missing out on some of that deep bass that some of the content you're consuming may command. Now when you look at the mid-range, the lower mid-range is relatively flat, and that's where things start to change. As you approach 1K, my rig measures a slight lift. The dip at 1.5K to 2K is very subtle compared to something like the Hi-Fi Men product. But the most noticeable sound characteristic, both objectively and subjectively, is the 3 kilohertz peak, which some people are going to like and some people won't. And that's okay because we have different preferences. This 3K peak to some people will seem slightly shouty. Now, this isn't overly shouty. It is definitely shouty to some other products, especially when you compare it to like an HD 650 or 6XX, but we can always EQ. Now, it's not fatiguing elsewhere, so keep that in mind when you look at the upper frequencies. Now, when you're approaching 4K to 6K, it is recessed a bit. That does help with listening fatigue, and then it's lifted back up as you approach 8K and upwards. There's also, it doesn't show, it does measure a bit on my rig. There is like a 14K, 15K peak. What I ended up doing was I did EQ this slightly, but that 14K peak, how it shows on my graph or not, does make snares. It sound more snary, I guess. You know, certain songs with the instruments, when you get into higher frequency percussive instruments, it comes across a little bit artificial, and the timbre of those is just slightly off. Elsewhere, though, this measures extremely well, and when we compare it to the Hi-Fi Men Sandara, so let's do that now, you can see that the Sandara actually shares some good characteristics to the MM-100, and the Sandara's been out for a few years. It's been an amazing headphone for the money. Now, the big change is the Sandara has just a touch more warmth around 80 Hertz, and that is noticeable with certain guitar instruments, but there is a noticeable bass roll-off below 60 Hertz. The mid-range on the Sandara is excellent as well, and like I said, the dip that you have on the Sandara, it does seem more noticeable because the 1K isn't filled in as much as it is on the MM-100. Now the Sandara definitely has more mid-treble and upper treble emphasis compared to the MM-100. The MM-100 sounds a little bit more relaxed in comparison. When you look at it compared to the Hi-Fi Men Edition XS, and the reason why I'm bringing up the XS is because sale price is different than list price, and it's worth considering when you look at stuff in the similar price range. The XS has more warmth. It definitely feels more warm down at the bottom, and it sounds thinner and as you approach the upper vocal range, you know, the 1 to 2K region. And then just like the Sandara, it's filled in. You know, when you compare it to the Sandara open back, they actually share quite a bit in common. The frequency response isn't too far off. They just have a different treble sound signature. The bass is comparable. You can obviously EQ it a little bit, but I do find the Sandara and the XS, they sound a little bit thinner with vocals, but then there's more treble up top. Things sound a little bit more sparkly. I don't want to say overly sharp because they're not horrible, but they definitely have the treble turned up, whereas this is a little bit more relaxing at the expense of being just slightly shouty. Now, when it comes to subjective sound quality, in my opinion, or what I like or don't like, the shoutiness is there, and it's more exposed depending on the mix. You know, if you listen to certain metal or even older music in general, some stuff that's mastered just be a little bit more harsh sounding, it's not a good compliment. However, if you find something that's softer and works well with this particular sound profile, it sounds excellent. So your mileage is always going to vary, and we always have different sound preferences ourselves. So I'll give a few examples with some songs. There's a song called Trouble's What You're In, and it was sung live by an artist called Fink, and it was at Union Chapel in London. And his voice is incredible in that song. I mean, it really cuts through the crowd. As soon as he opened the song, the crowd starts cheering. And it is definitely forward on the MM100, borderline too forward. If you are very sensitive to shout, that is a little bit more exposed with there. It's also more exposed on voices like David, I think it's David Gahn from Depeche Mode. His voice is kind of forward as well, and it doesn't complement this sound signature as well unless you EQ it down just slightly. I mean, all you need to do is take 3 dB off of 3K, and it makes a pretty big difference. So, but anyway, it's more forward on the MM100. When you listen to that same song, Trouble's What You're In, on the Sundara or the XS, because they are thinner in that frequency range, it sounds a little bit more airy and more lively. It actually replicates that concert performance a little bit better than the MM100 did. Conversely, if you listen to the song Like a Prayer by King Hana, it was a cover of the Madonna song. It's a slow song, but seriously, give it a listen. If you have some good headphones or speakers at home, it's pretty awesome to listen to. That song sounds absolutely incredible on the MM100. So much better than what it did on either Hi-Fi Men product. So this again is exposing the whole debate of sound profile versus song and personal preference. Her voice sounds amazing on it, but if on headphones like these that have more upper treble energy, it is almost like just cranking your treble knob, or it sounds a little bit too sparkly, too sibilant. Her S's come across almost too harsh sounding, and that's completely gone on the MM100. And then you get a better sound profile because of it, because you can turn it up a little bit without wincing or squinting like, ugh, that treble's a bit much. The MM100 dials it back just right. I think that because this has that 3K lift and the 1K lift, guitars have more energy on the MM100. There's more zing to it. And even a drumstick hitting the top of a drum has a little bit more of that like attack to it. It has a little bit more bite, whereas this is a little bit more dulled down. So when you're listening to like electric, wow, I'm getting ahead of myself actually in my head, but when you listen to electronic music or EDM, this sounds a little bit more digitized. It sounds like you're more directly connected to the synth, if that makes sense, because it's so overly analytical in that treble region, whereas this just seems a little bit smoother and toned down. The XS, I really do like the XS sound signature. The fit is always kind of weird for me, and that is a super important thing in a headphone, especially when you're spending this much. You want to make sure it feels natural in your head. This has great bass performance. It's a huge planar driver, and because they're so tall, they actually have a really nice sense of imaging as well. You get a lot of good verticality in your sound, whereas this sounds a little bit more intimate, a little bit more connected. It feels like a more cohesive sound presentation, but I do think the XS and the MM100 trade blows more than the Sundara, which through more critical listening seems to be outclassed by these two. When it comes to bass texture and resolution, I don't think this is getting to the level of like the LCD-X. The LCD-X is just insane for bass. I love the bass on that headphone. This is a little bit more tame and clean sounding. It's not as dynamic and overly punchy as like a good dynamic driver. However, it takes EQ really well. So out of the box, it is very neutral, just a slight hint of shout, but not fatiguing. And then with EQ, honestly, I would not even lift the bass first, just simply dial down 3K a little bit, maybe take a 14K notch out, drop that by a few dBs, around 14 kilohertz, and lift 5K by 2 or 3. Just doing that to a slight amount will make the bass sound like it's a little bit more forward because you're taking away some of that shout. And then if you still want more bass, you can do it. Now, compared to the Para, I did mention that I heard it at Can Jam, and that was it. So I don't want to get too critical of the Para in terms of sound quality right now, but it does have a similar sound signature to the MM-100. It's fairly neutral in the bass region, and it has a similar shout from what I heard at the show. Now, obviously, I'm not familiar with the amps they used, and the show's kind of noisy, but that's at least the general feeling I got until I can get my hands on it. It also feels heavier. I don't know if the Para is heavier or not, but it felt a little bit more unwieldy to hold, whereas this is very natural to handle and wear. So I do like the MM-100 more from a fit and finish and how it felt on my head, but we'll see once I get my hands on an actual review unit. All right, now I want to talk about gaming performance because I know I'm going to get asked about it, and two, I loved it so much, I want to talk about it anyway. So skip ahead on the next chapter if you don't care about gaming, but for those of you who do, holy cow, this thing is just amazing. Now, I played with the Sundara. The Sundara is an interesting headphone for gaming because it is very good at retrieving detail, but I always felt like it wasn't the right image I was supposed to get. Everything just felt just slightly off, especially when it came to, like, you know, if you're playing first-person shooters, it's clear, but the positioning is so much better on the MM-100. I just feel like I don't have to think it as hard. It sounds more natural. Now, part of that has to do with driver matching. It also has to do with the sound signature. But this has deep bass extensions, so you get immersion when you want. When you're playing the new Spider-Man 2 or Starfield and that deeper bass or hums are there, this is going to deliver. It's also not fatiguing on the high end, which is really helpful for games like Call of Duty, which I use as a reference a lot. That game is mixed pretty terribly, and footstep performance at 120 hertz is great and everything, but when you hear, like, you know, airstrikes and gunfire constantly blasting your ears, having too much energy in certain frequencies actually can hurt and cause you to turn your volume down, where this sound signature fit Call of Duty really well. I didn't have to EQ it. I just plugged it in. I was like, okay, this is good. I don't feel like I need to get anything more to still play and enjoy the game. Now, here's the kicker. The V-Moda Boom Pro microphone is less than $20, and it uses the exact same connection that the MM-100 needs for sound. All I have to do is plug it into the right ear cup, and now I have, for $420, an insane gaming headset. This is it. That's all I need. It even comes with a Y adapter, so if you have like two audio sources on your computer, it comes with a splitter, or just use the TRRS plug to connect to your controller, console, any computer with a combo jack, or even your phone, and you have a chat headset headphone that does everything for music and gaming. This thing even has a mic switch and a volume rocker on it in case you want quick adjustment. All right, and this is what the V-Moda Boom Pro microphone sounds like. It sounds really good for a $20 mic, and the fact that you can add this to a $400 headphone and basically get all you need in a gaming headset with comfort and sound quality in spades, it's an awesome add-on. So if you are considering this for gaming, this is an easy win. Even the cable doesn't negatively hurt the sound, so it's not like I'm sacrificing performance there just to get a mic. It still sounds excellent with it. Now, touching on something I said earlier about certain songs being great and some not as great, this opens up a really important discussion that should probably be its own video and discussion anyway, but we all have different sound signature preferences. Some people are going to like the MM-100 and some people won't, and that's normal, just like we like different music groups, bands, flavors of food. Now, even if you found that this sound signature is perfect, you will likely play a song one day that you don't like the way it sounds on this headphone. And that leaves you with either EQing it or accepting that that song doesn't make the headphone or complement the headphone well. So you tend to pick either the idea of getting close enough to your target sound with the flexibility of EQing to different genres or moods, or do you pick something that has a safe enough sound signature that basically works with everything but may not always shine or make the song sound as good as it can. So I think that this has a good balance of having a sound profile that most people would find enjoyable, with the caveat of using EQ to really make it sound amazing. A lot of people wanted this, a $400 planar magnetic headphone from Audeze with their build quality and design aesthetics. I mean, this is what a lot of people have been waiting on, and I'm so happy that you can get such an amazing audio product in this price range. The only part that makes this a little bit confusing is when you compare it to the Edition XS. Retail at $500. I prefer this at $400 from a value standpoint. However, Hi-Fi Man often slashes prices, so just keep that in mind. This is like $380 right now, or $375, so it's actually less than the MM100. Overall, even though I do like what this does with some of the sound as far as the bass warmth and the airiness that I get with certain music genres, I do like that headphone a lot. Fit on my head is important though, and they're so close in price that this just feels right when I wear it, and that's still a tangible benefit for me. It's something that's very important with headphones, is comfort. So that about wraps it up. I hope you found this video helpful and you learned something new about the MM100. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw, because I have a lot more coming. And with that being said, I'll see you next time. Thanks.